Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. President Buhari's assent to a proclamation for the convening of the 9th National Assembly could be the signal for more high-wire politics as the election of leaders of both the Senate and House of Representatives draws close. Joining us now to begin a countdown to the elections is Oke Epia, a legislative analyst and editor of Other Paper Nigeria. Oke Epia, welcome to the morning show. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much for coming to the morning show. Yeah, we were told that the president has issued a proclamation for the convening of the 9th National Assembly on Tuesday, June 11. But there seems to be some confusion about that. Whereas there was a document that was being circulated on Monday, the presidential liaison officer to the Senate, Senator Ita Enian, claims, or is on record as having claimed, that he's not aware that this proclamation has been pronounced. Now, what is the source of this confusion? Why should that be a big issue? When in any case, either the president pronounces, makes a proclamation or not, we expect that the National Assembly will convene next week. What is really happening?
Well, it should not be a big issue. Apparently, the document in question is a leaked document from the presidency. But like you noted, whether or not the document has become controversial is not the issue. It is inevitable that the proclamation will be made in any case, sometimes next week, by the president, who is constitutionally empowered to proclaim into existence the 9th National Assembly as required by the Constitution. So it is neither here nor there, the claims and counterclaims about the authenticity of the proclamation document. It's an event that is going to hold in any case sometime next week.
No, but the PDP is saying that, the presidency is playing hide and seek with this proclamation. Do you suspect that this has anything to do with the politics of the appointment of principal officers of the National Assembly, an issue we've been focusing on for quite some time?
Well, it may be possible. It may be just a red herring. Right now the politicking has gotten to a fever pitch point with a couple of days left before the convening of the 9th National Assembly. So all manners of politicking would play out. Don't forget that there are intrigues usually because of the contestation, the very high-level contestation for the office of the presiding officers of the Senate and of the House of Representatives. Rival camps and politicians would want to undo each other, and sometimes, the names of the presidency, there is name dropping and all of that. We have seen this happen. It happened in the current National Assembly that is exiting, where on the day of inauguration there was said to be a meeting where the president was going to meet members of the party from the National Assembly, and that took away a huge number of members to the International Conference Center in Abuja, while the inauguration was actually going on, at the National Assembly, so these things could happen. They could be the ways and means of politicians to gain advantage over their rivals. And what PDP is saying may be true, may not be true. But, I mean, the lessons have been learned from the last experience, and I'm sure that everyone is on their feet to be sure that nobody outdoes them, and they're also able to exercise. What is important is that senators elect and members of the House of Representatives elect are all able, they are not denied the opportunity to exercise their franchise in choosing who the president of the Senate would be, who the deputy president of the Senate would be, and also in the House of Reps. They should not be denied the opportunity to elect their leaders in the person of the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the Deputy Speaker.
Speaking on that leadership race, PDP was, boldly asserted their right to participate in the leadership race. but we haven't heard much from them since. Has there been any updates? Is there a candidate from the PDP contesting for Senate President or Speaker or deputies at this point? What we do know of is of the APC. What is the race looking like within the APC? We have had the anointed candidates, party-anointed candidates, Ahmed Lawan for the Senate President and Femi Gbajabiamila for the House of Representatives, but obviously they have some stiff competition. How is it looking?
Well, whether the PDP is talking or not, or is talking less at this point in time, is to be expected. Because what is happening is a whole lot of long nights of meetings and, negotiations, compromises, and some of these things are usually not put out in the media. They are made to unfold on the day of inauguration, where the main, play happens. So it is not about what and who is saying what, or talking less or more. What is currently, known to the public is that the APC, the position of the APC with respect to its choice for the leadership of the National Assembly is already in the public domain. And as far as I know, there are no changes to that. The contestation remains between whether the choices of the APC would become a reality, or it would be overturned, or it would be denied by the interplay of forces led by the opposition PDP, and indeed by, forces within the APC itself, because, like you are seeing playing out already. I listened to your conversation about what's going on in the APC, some kind of turmoil, like Ruben used the word. It's not likely that would, it's not unlikely that would not have an impact in what would happen next week in the National Assembly. Because if the party at that level is under this level, this kind of turmoil and, and crisis, it will certainly have a bearing on what would happen on the floor of the National Assembly. It presents a latch, for those who want to rebel to do so. It presents an opportunity for those who want to insist that party supremacy is just what it is. It's perhaps just a phrase, to do their thing, So it is not a good time. It is very inauspicious time that the APC, the hierarchy of the APC is going through this kind of trouble of leadership, because it would certainly have some bearing on its calculations for the National Assembly leadership. And I'm sure that the opposition party, especially the PDP, they are looking to take advantage of this.
There's been a recent development that I would also like you to comment on, which is the case involving Gbajabiamila, Akim Gbajabiamila of the APC, who we understand is the anointed candidate of the APC for the speakership of the House of Reps. Now, we're told that he's been summoned to appear in court in a particular matter on Monday. And do you think this will affect his chances? Do you think this has already damaged his chances? Because he's been charged for perjury and all of that. How much of a damage do you think that this particular development will do to his candidacy as a speaker?
Well, this is not the first time that the issues around judicial issues with Femi are coming up. In the last session, the current session, when he sought to also become speaker, the issues around, court cases also came up. In the minimum, it will present a distraction to his campaign. It will present some form of reputational challenge to his candidacy. And in the eyes of the public, that could be some kind of opinion shaping. But for members who are actually the main actors with respect to the elections itself, I'm sure that they understand that this is all politics, it's all part of the politicking. As long as no court of law has proclaimed or has pronounced him guilty of perjury, these are all within the realms of speculations. it may very well sway a couple of members, you know, to rethink their position about him. But, you know, I think that they are mature enough to understand that, okay, this court case this time around is what it is. It's a distraction to his candidacy and to his campaign. And until there is a judicial pronouncement on that issue, it is what it is. It's a distraction. You know, it will be interesting to see what exactly plays out. Femi is going to be on the ballot on the day of inauguration, and is going to get some votes. Whether the votes would sail him through is the question. You know, but really, I think he's focusing. I see that he's been everywhere, you know, talking to members. He's been campaigning around. He's been canvassing for votes. His camp appeared to be, you know, in high spirits, you know, in spite of these court cases. You know, but I mean, except there is a sudden, a very definitive pronouncement before the inauguration, I do not see how this would substantially affect his bid for speakership of the House of Reps.
Mohamed Bago of Niger State a credible threat to Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, because reports are that he has 195 members-elect supporting him. This is Mohamed Bago.
Well, we must be careful about these figures, really. Don't forget that there is some elements of propaganda laced in all of these. People can bandy figures from different camps as it suits them, you know. Well, I mean, what really matters is are these figures able to translate to reality on the day of inauguration, on the day of election? I am not meaning to say that Mohamed Bago is not a formidable contender for the office of Speaker. He is. I mean, we cannot downplay that fact, that he has refused to back down in spite of the reinforced position of the party that Mr. Gbajabiamila is his candidate. It shows that there is something going for him, and we cannot overlook that, whatever it is. So clearly, Mohamed Bago is a major contender for the race with Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila. And, but with respect to the numbers, Femi's camp would also tell you that they have numbers too. You know, they will tell you that, oh, PDP members are with us, you know, and we're coasting to victory. You know, but all of these are all, you know, these are all propaganda to a large extent, you know, because the real day happens on the floor of the House. You see that sometimes these numbers are real, sometimes they just come crumbling down because they are built on quicksands and they are not actually what they are, you know. So the major thing would be to look out for what happens on the floor. And I need to make this point. What's going to happen on the floor next week in the Senate and in the House of Reps? The inauguration and indeed the elections of the presiding officers of the National Assembly in both houses, the Senate and the House of Reps, would be very definitive for the Buhari administration. It would determine whether we would have a smooth governance process going forward, or would have some turbulent relations between both arms of government, the executive and the legislature. I say this because the narrative has been about the independence of the legislature versus an attempt to impose a leadership on the legislature. And so whichever sides win will have a bearing on what eventually happens between how the management of the relations between both arms of government. The way the Constitution is worded and contemplates a systems of separation of powers where there is independence of both arms of government, the legislature and the executive in this sense. And so if that sense of independence, you know, in the choice of leadership of the National Assembly appears, you know, is not allowed to hold sway by next week or whenever the inauguration holds, that would be a problem. And experience has shown that whenever there is an imposition or there is suspected imposition from the executive in the choice of leadership of the National Assembly, there is always, that's always the seed for a tumultuous National Assembly. There is always a change of leadership until members are also able to assert themselves. And, you know, on the flip side, when members are also able to elect leaders of their choice, we have, you know, we tend to have some level of stability in the leadership of the National Assembly. And so I think that however it plays out, when the elections hold, it will define very much the tenor of relations between the executive and the legislature. So I think that the party I am happy to note, they appear to have, moderated their tone about that initial hawkish tone about we will do this, we will do that, and we'll take all positions, we'll take all committees. That appears to have been toned down. I think good judgments and wisdom have prevailed. But I think that to a large extent, members should be allowed, to determine their choices. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you gain. The party should not seek to want to gain everything that is possible. In the Senate, it's a precarious situation. What happened in Zamfara has raised the hope and the prospects of the opposition. So there is really, it could go either way in the Senate with respect to the leadership, So the party needs to be conscious of that and be careful how it insists that its positions must hold sway. In the House of Reps, maybe the APC still has some good advantage, but you never say never until it happens. So what I'm trying to say in essence is that members must be allowed, senators must be allowed to determine the choice of leadership that they want. At the end of the day, the executive should seek to work with the leadership that emerges for the sake of the country, for the sake of good governance, and for the sake of development, for the sake of fulfilling the campaign promises that is set out, that is presented to Nigerians during the electioneering campaigns.
Well, just one follow-up question. It's good that you mentioned Zamfara. And some people have said with the Supreme Court decision on the Zamfara case, we could possibly have a development in the Senate, particularly, which you also identified, whereby just 6 members of the APC just need to cross to the PDP side or support a PDP candidate, and then you end up with a 2015 situation all over again, and you have somebody who is a PDP candidate, more or less, emerging as Senate president. Do you think this will happen? How strong is the possibility of this happening against all bookmakers' predictions?
Well, for the PDP, I think that Zamfara became a blessing. And so, like I said, it has heightened their hopes of laying a greater stake on the leadership of the Senate, especially. And so the probability is high. If you look at 44 members to what the APC have, the PDP can very well determine lots of things. And in as much as the APC is not able to put up a united front, in as much as the APC continues to insist on certain positions that its members are not willing or able to toe, it's going to be a challenge and some sort of a blessing for the PDP. So I think that the probabilities that the 2015 scenario, like you have put it, would play out in 2019, the probability is high. The PDP would clearly determine the choice of the president of the Senate. They could very well be also be daring enough to want to put forward a candidate for the position of deputy president of the Senate, and it could happen. This is politics, and politics on the floor is not what the APC says. It is not what analysts say. It is what the Constitution say, and it is what the politicians themselves on the floor of the Senate decide that this is what would happen. And like I keep making the point, for them really it's about who is in the better position to advance their interests as politicians, as senators, advance the interests of their various constituencies, and also, of course, make them have a sense of belonging in the Senate. If a senator believes that the anointed candidate of the party is not going to work in his favor with respect to advancing his personal political agenda, with respect to advancing the interests of his constituency, come on, it's not likely to go that way. If he has a better offer from the other side of the aisle, it's likely to go that way. And I mean, the rules of the Senate do not, give the opportunity of determining who did what by, in terms of the voting, because it's clear that it's going to be secret ballot system of voting. So people would clearly be at peace to disobey the positions of the party, and there will be no consequences because they cannot easily be identified as such. So really, the hopes are high. 2015 scenario is a huge possibility, especially in the Senate, and I think think that, like I have said, the APC and the presidency should just take it for granted that whatever scenario that eventually becomes a reality, come on, the interest of the country supersedes everything. You know, we should be able to work together. Both arms of government should be able to work together to advance the interest of Nigerians and to promote the programs of the party. It is doable. It's doable. I think it is doable.
Essentially paraphrasing the congratulatory message the president sent to, members-elect and senators-elect, saying that the #1 priority should be cooperation between the legislature and the executive. But earlier you mentioned separation of powers. Can you just tell us very briefly how to strike the proper balance? Because you cannot have open-ended, unqualified cooperation between two independent arms of government. Neither should you have, roadblocks and challenges just for the sake of roadblocks and challenges between those two branches. So very briefly, can you explain to us the importance of cooperation, but at the same time maintaining the functions of the legislature, which is oversight?
Yeah, two key issues that you have raised: independence of both arms of government and cooperation and collaboration. And the Constitution already provides for separation of powers, and which speaks to the independence of both arms of government. In this case, the executive and the legislature. There is also the ingredient of checks and balances, which also speaks to the issue of roadblocks in quotes that you mentioned. But really, these are not roadblocks. There is no absolute power. There is no absolute separation of power. The framers of the Constitution, indeed, those who propounded the theories of separation of powers and checks and balances, did not imagine or contemplate an absolute system where you would stand this way and I stand this way, and there is no coming together to reach a midpoint. It doesn't happen that way. I'm not sure that's what Montesquieu had in mind when he propounded the theory of separation of powers, and our Constitution makes it clear that way. So you have areas where the legislature performs certain executive functions. You have areas where the executive performs certain, quasi-legislative functions and even quasi-judicial functions. For instance, that the Code of Conduct Bureau is in the presidency, but that is more like a judicial function. So yeah, there's a meeting point here and there between all three arms of government. And so what is key, like you have said, is cooperation and collaboration, while maintaining that independence and putting up that checks and balances. It should not be for the sake of it. There is usually a meeting point where there is some collaboration and cooperation, which may not be, explicitly stated in the books, but, by way of politicking and by way of, advancing the interests of citizenry of the country, it can be made to happen.
Well,
take, for instance, the budgetary process.
Yes, Oke Epia, you cannot be more correct. Thank you very much for your insights and for helping us to understand better what the proclamation means and what we're likely to expect next week. Thank you very much indeed.